Hey, good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to Oshkosh 2021. Great to be here, isn't it? Woo! These days, it's great to be any place that you can be outside, not have a mask on, and be having a great time with fellow aviators. But anyhow, thanks for coming out. We got a lot to talk about in the next 45, 50 minutes about what's happening with AOPA around the country and DC and a lot of other exciting news. So we want to get started pretty quickly. We will have time for a few questions at the end. So if you would like to ask a question, Eric Blinderman over here, he's got some cards. We ask that you write those down. He'll be collecting them just when you get a chance, kind of put your hand up and he can come by, and we'll get to as many of those as we can at the end. But let's go ahead and get started. But Mark, let me just introduce a few people. Mark Baker, our president and CEO, of course you probably know. Richard McSpadden is the senior vice president of the Air Safety Institute. Elizabeth Tennyson is the executive director of the You Can Fly program. And Melissa Rudinger is executive director of the AOPA Foundation. And we got Murray down there in the end, who is our vice president of regulatory affairs in Washington. So, Mark, we got to also have a couple of special guests here today.
We do. In the back row back there, we've got one of our board of trustees, been on the board for 30 years and is the chairman of the board for AOPA. Bill Trimble is in the audience. And Amanda Farnsworth is a short timer on the AOPA board, only 10 years. So thank you, Amanda, for being on the board of trustees of this organization.
So, Mark, we all sat at home for a lot of months, and we're wondering, what would general aviation look like when we were able to get back out and about again? You were out, I think, ahead of just about anybody. It really didn't slow you down a lot, flying your personal airplanes around the country. So what are you seeing out there as you're around the country? What's happening with general aviation?
Well, Tom, thanks. I've seen a lot of this. A lot of people flying airplanes, burning a lot of good avgas, and enjoying this great thing we call the freedom to fly because of 82 years of AOPA's leadership, making sure things happen. If you think about a year ago, many of us were concerned about what about our medical and extensions and things like that. We're going to be able to get it pushed back, which we did work with the FAA, the regulators, 3 times. So you get your medical done and things like that. We were really busy last year trying to support GA, and some of our folks in and around GA were building PPE equipment and getting it moved, trying to help relieve the pressures of this pandemic all around the country. But I don't think any of us, me included, got it right. People would start buying airplanes, start renting airplanes, start upgrading ratings, and really flying a lot more. You heard the stories last summer where there were many days where there were more 172s in the air than there were 737s. And today when I go around the country and fly and meet people who are running good FBOs and taking care of us, they're selling more avgas than they ever have in many locations. More people are taking flying lessons. A lot of flight schools are sold out through kind of the end of the year right now. General aviation has seen a boom, and I expect it to continue. With the amount of new airplanes being sold, or sold out for the most part, all the OEMs for the rest of this year, certainly in a big part of next year, as well as used aircraft prices going up, which is good for those of us that have one. Bad if you're trying to get in, maybe, but I feel like it's going to continue to run. General aviation has seen an uptick in the number of licenses that we're seeing issued, ratings that are being increased. It is just going good. I don't think you have to say too much more about this great event here. I pointed out last night, I've been coming mostly on, not off, since 1977, 42 years at AirVenture. And I'll tell you what, this looks like the biggest one yet of real aviators. The South 40, I think they'll be adding on to call it the South 80 here pretty soon because they've got to get that highway out of the middle. It is just packed and booming. When you talk to the people that advertise in our magazine and support us in many ways, they're really selling a lot of product this week. So I can't tell you enough about all the things that are going on in the state of GA that are just so darn positive. I think we're on to a big boom. Now, we've got some topics we've got to talk about today, and the reason why you're supporting members is we have some issues with a thing called a LOTA, which my friend Murray will help us explain here in a little bit. We have some things that are good news. General aviation fuel may have an alternative for leaded fuel that was introduced this week, so we're very excited about that as an opportunity. But I think, I'm really proud of what our group has done in the You Can Fly category and the things that are going to be shared with that team. The number of kids that are getting interested in aviation at a very young age today and what that program's about. And Richard is going to talk about how come we've become some of the safest in the country in the years that we've ever had in general aviation, GA has seen a really good number with more usage, which is really terrific. And then Melissa, she's going to ask you to put your wallets on the table and leave. So we got some good stuff to talk about, Tom.
Yeah, we really do. And you talk about what's happening in general aviation and the exciting news about the number of the activity levels. You know, we track activity at the top 77 airports around the country and looking at it every week. And there were lots of weeks we were seeing GA activity 20 and 30% higher than 2019 numbers. And that was going all the way back into the middle of 2020. You know, the things fell off a cliff in April and May. Then flight schools kind of figured out how to get back in the air, and people began using their airplanes again. And so by the middle of last summer, we were seeing really high numbers, and that continues. And it's important that we kind of help protect that growth. And one of the things that's important, of course, to keep our airplanes going is fuel. And as Mark alluded to, we had great news yesterday. As a good first step, or a step forward in getting rid of leaded fuel, was an STC was announced for a new unleaded fuel. So, Murray, you want to talk a little bit about that? You've been engaged with that a lot.
Sure. Can you hear me? Okay, thank you. So unleaded fuel, I know yesterday there was an announcement by GAMI that they have came up with a 100 unleaded fuel. And I want to just mention that is a STC approval. And in regards to that, what that is a supplemental type certificate for the fuel. And it is by make model. So it's a very limited STC in the beginning. And we hope to see some good results of the testing that'll be done in those engines that it is approved for. So just wanted to mention that. And the Pafi program is another avenue. I want to make sure to get it right. It's the Piston Aviation Fuels Initiative. And what that does, that is a testing procedure that came out. It's been going for years now. And the big success was getting the testing protocols for a fleet-wide approval. And that's the key language. We're after a fuel that is capable of running in the full entire GA fleet with minimal interruptions in service and requirements on the aircraft. So that's the process that we're pursuing heavily, and AOPA is heavily involved in the leadership committee working that through that Pafi program. So.
Yeah, so that is really good news. It's a good start. We have a long way to go. We're probably many months and probably years away from actually having that fuel available to the entire fleet, but it's certainly a good step. Another bit of news that's been unfolding over the last couple of weeks has been some of the challenges around flight training in the warbird community and also in the experimental market. And again, our team in Washington and Mark and personally has been involved in many conversations with the administrator to try to sort this out. It's kind of a mess, Mark. Why don't you explain a little bit what's going on?
Yeah, this whole thing has been a bit of a frustration, maybe even aggravation level. That was an unnecessary interpretation by some lawyers within the FAA, in my opinion. And I really feel strongly about that. And I called the Administrator Dixon on a Saturday morning and said, or Sunday morning, and said, this is wrong. It just makes no sense to put 40,000 people through a process of filling out a piece of paper that doesn't add to safety. As a matter of fact, it may impede safety because if one of you takes one less flight hour training or give one less hour of flight training, we go backwards on a very safe industry these days and move in the right direction. Unfortunately, we were not able to get them to stand down on that, although Murray can tell you what the bill number is. We've actually got a bipartisan bill that's going to be pushed through to make sure that all flight training basically becomes interpreted as a training and not as a holdout for hire or anything like that can be confused as compensation, because we want more flight training, not less flight training, less confusion. Today, it affects limited category, restricted category, primary category, and all experimental aircraft. Basically, what the lawyer interpreted was anytime you are giving flight training in an aircraft like that, you are required to get a LOTA, Letter of Deviation Authority, because it's considered that you're getting compensated. Even though the guy, your buddy, didn't give you anything but a bratwurst and a warm beer, it's still considered compensation. No money has to change hands. So we want a good interpretation, and are forcing this one way or the other. So Murray, you could give them a little bit more about that, but trust us, we're working with all the organizations. We're going to find a way to get rid of this.
Yeah, thank you, Mark. And so Mark mentioned the two bills. We have two bills, one in the House, one in the Senate. These we have available in the tent over there. It's H.R. 4645 and S 2458. That's the two bills, and they get into the LOTA requirements, also the compensation for hire definitions. So what we're asking is all of our members to reach out to your legislative representatives and so in support of these bills, make them support these bills going through.
Right, and that's what those handouts are about, really, is to kind of give you some talking points to talk to your member of Congress and help them understand, because you're going to have to educate them. Most of them are not pilots, so you're going to have to educate them a little bit about why this is important, and that's what some of those points on that handout are meant to do. So, as Mark said, this does nothing to improve safety, because at AOPA we're really focused on safety through our Air Safety Institute and trying to make sure that GA continues to be as safe as possible, because one accident, every accident is a bit of a black mark for us, and we're very conscious of that. So Richard McSpadden's here to talk about some of the things that the Air Safety Institute's been doing and the success they've had with some of the online products and that sort of thing they've been creating to help pilots.
Yeah, thanks, Tom. Good afternoon, everyone. And really, it starts with a congratulations and a thank you to all the pilots in this audience, because we are off to the best start in general aviation safety ever. In the history of general aviation, we've never had a first half of the year that's been this safe. And think about that. That's really remarkable. And it's really a testament to how you're flying your airplanes and maintaining your airplanes and keeping your knowledge safe. And as Tom and Mark mentioned, activity level in GA, it was more like a check mark than a V from the pandemic. It went down and then it boomed right back up. And what we've learned, we think, is that during that down period, general aviation pilots worked on the 5 things that make you a safer pilot: knowledge, training, proficiency, equipment, and culture. And the key to safety is to work all 5 pieces of those models. And that's what we work in Air Safety Institute. That's really the model that drives us for all the materials that we make. We're on just about every channel you can think about, YouTube and Instagram and Facebook. What we want to do is make information accessible to you whenever, wherever, however you want to consume it. We have podcasts, and our material was consumed over 12 million times last year. And again, I want to thank and congratulate you. That's about a 35% increase year over year from what we saw the year before. So what we know is during that downtime, pilots were upgrading their airplanes. Anybody in here try to get any kind of avionics upgrade done during the pandemic? They were upgrading their engines. They were working on their knowledge. We saw all those metrics going in the right direction. And I think, of course, it's all conjecture this early, but it looks like that's why we're having such a safe year, coming off of what would have been a really concerning year. So we're really excited about that. So Tom, that's kind of where we are in GA safety and ASI.
Yeah, really. That is great news, and it's particularly good news because there's such a need for pilots right now. And as Mark alluded to, we've seen an uptick in the number of pilots in the pilot population after a 30-year decline. Do you know how hard it is to rescue a 30-year decline? But we managed to turn that corner about 3 or 4 years ago, and so we're seeing more and more pilots. And we're doing a lot, actually, to bring pilots back into flying and also to sort of educate the next generation about the aviation opportunities. And that's where our You Can Fly program kicks off. And so, Elizabeth, tell us what's happening over there.
Yeah, thank you, Tom. So while Mark is busy fighting for us and Richard is keeping us safe, I have the great pleasure of helping grow our community and making sure that we actually get to fly more often. I hope some of you are already familiar with You Can Fly. It's a 4-pronged program, and it's designed to meet people in their aviation journey wherever they are. So we start at the high school level. We introduce students to careers and the opportunities to fly, lots and lots of kids. If they don't know one of you, they don't know that it's out there, and they don't know that they can do it. But with our 4-year aviation STEM program, which, thanks to our donors, we can give to schools completely free, which is amazing. Schools pay hundreds of thousands of dollars for curriculum, and we are able to give it to them completely free. So schools in all areas, of all sizes, of all types, can have access to meaningful aviation STEM education and get kids hooked. So last year, we had about 8,000 kids in just over 200 schools and 36 states using the program. We won't really know the final numbers until September rolls around and they're back in classrooms. But so far, we have 275 schools in 43 states and almost 500 teachers signed up to teach this program. So that is very, very exciting. Another place where we're working really hard to grow the pilot population is in the flight training community. I know every person here has probably been through flight training, and you've probably had some incredible experiences and probably a few really challenging experiences too. So we want to really raise the standard and help flight schools do that so that they can stop the dropout rate. You may have heard a few years ago we did some research and we found out that student pilots were starting training, and then as many as 70 to 80% of them were dropping out without ever earning a certificate. So these are people who took the time to go take some lessons, go to a flight school, find an instructor, and it's astonishing that they're not completing the process. So one of the things we have done is we have just launched what we call the AOPA Flight Training Advantage. And this is an app and web portals that allow students to learn to fly efficiently, help instructors deliver the best training. And the most amazing thing about it is that it adapts to the individual's progress to help them overcome hurdles, to help them not get stuck on a plateau. So on day one, each of us would take the same lesson. By lesson 5, we'd all have our own lesson. They wouldn't look the same. And the app automatically makes that adaptation so that we're each learning at our own pace, at our maximum efficiency for us. So we've just launched that a couple of months ago. We've got almost 100 schools using it now. We've logged more than 500 hours in the app, and we're very excited about where that's going too. I think it's going to make a big difference for what flight training looks like and how you experience that. And of course, many of you are probably members of flying clubs. It is a great way, as you know, to fly, to share all the benefits of aircraft ownership, and to have camaraderie, as well as a community that can really work together to build safety and to go just have fun, a reason to go to the airport and hang out with your friends, a good excuse to go flying, and a way to make it less expensive. So over the past few years, we have helped launch more than 185 flying clubs around the country. We've also got a flying club finder online, so if anybody is looking to be part of that experience, please check it out, see what clubs are available in your area. But we're also prepared to help you start your own. So if you've got an idea for a club, maybe you've got a friend or two you'd like to bring on board, or maybe you just want to reach out to people you haven't met yet, we will absolutely help you do that. And then the final pillar of our program is Rusty Pilots. I actually see some faces that I saw this morning at our Rusty Pilots presentation. So thank you very much for being here, and thank you for being part of that. You know, it's been a privilege over the last few years to talk to a lot of people who thought maybe getting back into flying was out of reach, maybe it was a little hard, maybe it was too complicated. And there's a great deal of fear if you've been out for quite a while. How will I ever remember this? How will I ever learn the regs again? You know what? It turns out it's really not that hard. It's very accessible, and the proof is in the numbers. We have now helped more than 9,800 Rusty pilots get back to current status and get back to flying. So. And I do want to mention just one more thing, before I hand it off to Melissa, and that's our scholarship program. We have the great privilege of awarding scholarships each year to high school students, to teachers, to people seeking a primary rating, and to people seeking an advanced rating. All of those scholarships are donor funded, and it's a great way for us to help people advance their own flying, but also to help us advance our community by bringing in people that may not otherwise have access to flying. So in this past year, we awarded over $1.1 million in scholarships, and of our winners, 44% were female and 21% were people of color. So these are audiences we have traditionally not done a great job of reaching. And so if we can keep doing this and keep helping these folks out and giving them the opportunity to learn to fly, I think we can see a real change over the next few years. So that's it for me. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Elizabeth. One quick reminder for in case you came in late. If you have any questions, put your hand up. Eric over here. We'll be glad to take a question. If you want to write it down, we'll get to some questions at the end. And when you get finished writing your question, just flag them down again and we'll take it. But that's all great news, Elizabeth. A lot of great stuff coming out of the You Can Fly program. And what a lot of people don't realize is that none of the AOPA member dues really go directly to those programs for You Can Fly or the Air Safety Institute. It's all funded by donors. And Melissa has stepped up to run the foundation and is seeing great success in engaging donors and making all that happen.
Yes, thanks, Tom. So, as Richard pointed out, I mean, the Air Safety Institute's been around since 1950, delivering safety content, and I think it just gets better and better each year. And of course, You Can Fly is a newer initiative, but it's been around for at least 5 years and really making a difference in terms of growing the pilot population. And as they've both pointed out, much of what they do is free and available to anybody, whether they're an AOPA member or not, but somebody's got to pay for it. And we have a wonderful, wonderful donor base. We have some so generous AOPA members that donate to the foundation every year. Every dollar matters, from low dollar to high dollar. It makes a difference in helping us to continue to fund both these programs. And for me personally, with the high school initiative, it's especially heartwarming because I came from a non-aviation family, and I didn't even know I would have an interest in aviation, but my church happened to have an Explorer post that was an Aviation Explorer post. And for reasons unknown to me to this day, a defense contractor donated a hot air balloon and a crew. And the leadership of that Explorer post said the first kid to pass their written test will get to learn to fly this balloon, get their commercial lighter than air certificate for free. So I hot-footed it over to I think it was the GATO or the FSDO, I don't remember, but passed the test, got my commercial license. That got me on the airport, because we flew out of the airport, got me into an FBO, got me interested in fixed wing, and a job at the airport to pay for my flight training. And that all happened because a donor or donors stepped up and got young kids interested in aviation. And I'm not unique. There's thousands and thousands of kids like me that were exposed to aviation at a young age that didn't know it even existed. So it's a real personal story for me. I'm thrilled to be at the foundation and running it. And I think we're just going to continue to do great things in the years ahead.
Absolutely. Thanks. And of course, our Washington staff leads the regulatory and legislative teams, and what a lot of people don't know is how effective AOPA really is in Washington. We have the attention of people both at the FAA and on the Hill because of how effective our staffs are down there. In fact, AOPA for the 7th year in a row was recognized by the Hill, which is a publication in Washington that's very influential. But they recognize AOPA's advocacy team as among the top advocacy organizations in the country, and it's really significant that we've done it for 7 years in a row. And one of the big wins that we've had in the last few years is regarding basic med, which was something that had been languishing for a long time. And Mark, you were heavily involved in making that happen.
Well, yeah, Tom. I think when I first attended AirVenture on behalf of being the leader at AOPA, I was overwhelmed by the number of people that were concerned about third-class medical reform. It had been a topic for over 30 years, and the ball had not moved off the 1-yard line in 30 years. We recruited Jim Kuhn, who leads the Government Affairs group with Murray works in. We started really focusing on delivering a bill, which, as you know, is really hard to get done in a kind of divided Congress, which has been the nature of our institution for a long time. And we were able to get a bill introduced, could call it now, 6 years ago, and get it through, and it became law 5 years ago, and became done before the FAA was actually required to do it in May of whatever that is, 16. It became a law, and then as part of the law of basic med was there was required to be a 5-year look back, because there were some people that were detractors of the idea of having third-class reform that said we have to do a 5-year look back and maybe have to change some of the rules within the basic med. You didn't have to do that because you did great. Over 66,000 people are flying under basic med today. We can't tell the statistical difference between that and third-class medicals as far as accident rates or anything else that comes into play that might have caused them to take another look at this. As a matter of fact, we published our 5-year results 2 weeks ago, and I don't think there's actually going to be a 5-year look back beyond much of that because it has been so successful. We have a couple of objectives we're trying to get done. We got Bahamas and Mexico. We have 2 avenues. We're going to try and get that thing allowed to be in Canada, a reciprocal agreement, bilateral agreement with Canada, or using ICAO, which are very active in Montreal, to try and get it recognized worldwide as a standard of safety. Because the safety came back strong. You did great, thank goodness. But I think we can now take this thing to the world.
Yeah, that was a really significant move for a lot of pilots. And while we talk a lot about what happens in Washington, again, people I don't think always recognize the presence that we have at the regional level, the state level, and at local airports as well. So Murray, talk about some of the impact of that.
Yeah, thank you, Tom. So, as Tom and Mark mentioned, we do have an office in D.C., and that's with reason. I mean, when you look at the advocacy that we do, we need to be right by the Capitol, and that's actually where the office resides. And we do a lot of work. We have a legislative branch that works there. They're the ones that are the lobbyists that are right there working with Congress to get things done on behalf of our members. We also have the regulatory branch, which I lead, and it's a privilege. We definitely stay busy working with the FAA and the other organizations, government organizations, and other associations as well. We stay very busy working topics. In addition, we have an airports branch, and that's led by Mike Ginter, the VP, and we have a couple people there in D.C., but the majority of his people are out with you across the country. We have 7 regional managers that reside in regions across the country, and we also have currently 1,905 airport support network people, volunteers, and that's from your ranks. Mike has a goal in 2022 to go to 2,500. So if your airport does not have an ASN from AOPA, please talk to Mike, and I'm sure he would be happy to bring you on board, because we are looking to bring more on. And they serve a really important role for us, for AOPA and for the members. And then some of the topics that we are working on behalf of the members, and the LOTA was already mentioned. I just wanted to add to that, if that is you, if you are flying or getting training in an experimental aircraft, there's 2 options to get that LOTA, and we are recommending getting the LOTA, because I'll mention the legislative work that we're doing with it. But in the interim, it's important that you stay in compliance with the FAA's direction. So if you would visit me after this seminar or session in the tent over there, I'll talk you through it, and we can actually file it right there. We have some QR codes that you're able to scan, fill it out. It's an email to the FAA, and they did this just for Oshkosh, for AirVenture. If you file it here, you're supposed to have it in your hand by July 31st. So that's their commitment. It's right on the form I'll show you over there, which is great that they're doing that. However, we disagree with the whole process the FAA came forward with on this, as Mark described. We have introduced legislation, and that's the bills here. And also, so we're definitely going to be continue fighting this on behalf of the membership, because it is not right. Another area we're working on is the military operations areas, and special use airspace. What we're doing there is we are pursuing with the DoD and FAA, and there's been basically a law has already been signed that says they will provide almost real time, within minutes, status of an MOA or SUA in the cockpit of the aircraft for pilots. And the reason we're doing this is it's so important to know what the status is, because it can save millions of dollars in fuel if pilots are able to go through an MOA that is not active, instead of having to skirt it. If you fly a lot around cross country, I'm sure you've had to do that. So we're pursuing that pretty heavily as well. We're also, we have legislation that we've proposed on the National Center for Advancement of Aviation, and what that is a joint industry to get more, to help the workforce shortage. We all hear and read from the Boeing report and all the other reports across the world of the shortage of aviation pilots and mechanics. But what this is going to do is allow to enhance the training and just more qualified people coming into the aviation sector. So it's a pretty robust proposal that we're pursuing there as well. A lot of you probably heard of Mosaic. That's getting into the experimental aircraft area, light sport. And what that is it's the modernization of the special use or special aircraft certification. And what it does, it's going to be bringing in some new technologies, allowing easier entry of technologies into the light sports sector. And the ASTM, it's ASTM consensus standard driven. I was actually in an ASTM meeting this morning on Mosaic. FAA was in the room, and so we had a good discussion, and there's some good things coming. It is in rulemaking right now. So the current status of Mosaic is it's in ex parte communications, which means it's internal to the FAA right now. They are reviewing it between all the branches of the FAA, and then they will come back and put it in notice of proposed rulemaking once they complete that. And that's when all the members and the associations need to be replying and commenting on the proposed rule language. Everything we're seeing is it looks like it's bringing in some really good things for the experimental, expanded performance envelope, possibilities of retract gear. We're hearing, we don't know exactly what's going to come out, but that's kind of what we're hearing on the side is a lot of the proposals originally are still in there, or where they may slightly change. Some could be pulled. We won't know until the NPRM is issued. So you can count on hearing some media from us at the appropriate time requesting you to comment. So be on the lookout for that. And then, let's see, you already talked about that. Transparency is another area, and this has to do with the airport side. One of the things that we've been pursuing is transparency of FBO pricing and parking fees for general aviation aircraft. If you've used the AOPA airport directory, that's the system where you can go in and find what the airport's going to charge you when you pull up on the ramp, or the FBO fuel prices. The problem is not all of them are transparent, and that's the push we're doing. We're pushing the FBOs heavily to get transparent, make it fair for all pilots to know what's going on. So you don't have to be their fuel card member to know. So that's another big push going on. The airport side of the house is really working hard on that across the country. I believe the last number I saw was 10% of 2,000 airports or 3,000 airports have become transparent. Because of this, there's still a long way to go. Atlantic FBOs, they're kind of the model right now for how to do it right. And I know Signature has some work to do. Just calling you out there, but just saying. And so that's a lot of what's going on, Tom.
Right. Well, thanks, Murray. Actually, there is a lot going on, and that really is only a smaller part about what the team down there is working on every day on behalf of members. And so one of the challenges for my group, the Media Communications and Outreach team, is to let you all know what it is that all these folks are working on. Of course, we have many ways to do that with our email newsletters, our video channel, AOPA Live this week, and our magazines. We've got the magazines in the tent. If you haven't seen the latest issue, we do have did do a redesign for Pilot Magazine, and so take a look at that. Give us your feedback on that. Flight Training Magazine, as well, is the only magazine out there exclusively dedicated to the student pilots and flight instructors to help them get better at instructing and help students better understand the concepts for flight training. And we have a lot of other channels too, podcasts, as Richard said, and many other means to reach members. We also have the communication staff that works with sort of the other associations to communicate what's happening in the general aviation community out to both the aviation media, but our team also works really hard with national media to try to get exposure to some of the great things that are happening in general aviation. Like as Mark said, when we were using GA airplanes to deliver vaccines and PPE when we've got schools using the aviation STEM curriculum to help introduce kids to aviation and the great job opportunities that are out there. We work hard at engaging national media on that to get the good word out about general aviation. The other thing we do is events. My team helps organize our presence here, for example, but we also have some events of our own. Many of you have probably been to some of our regional fly-ins that we've had over the last 6-7 years, and they've been a lot of fun. And unfortunately, we could not do that in 2020, and we decided to come forward into 21 because it was so uncertain about what was going to be happening in the world. We kind of modified our outreach strategy for 2021, and so we have 2 aviator showcase events, one coming up August 27th in Manassas, Virginia, one in October 1st in Fort Worth, Texas. So hope you can come by. They're just one-day events. It's on a Friday, and it's just a great place to come in and learn about maybe how to buy an airplane, how to modify or upgrade an airplane. We'll have exhibitors, and we'll have some aircraft on display for you to take a look at and maybe whet your appetite a little bit for buying an airplane if you're not currently an aircraft owner, or maybe upgrading your airplane. So please come by with that, and we'll see what happens for 2022. We are looking ahead to try to figure out what we can do for events in 2022. Hopefully it'll be a little simpler than what we had coming into 21. We also have a lot of great products. On the website, Aircraft Guide is something new we put up over COVID. We focused a lot of resources in pulling together a lot of information about all the airplanes in the general aviation fleet. So there's a lot of detailed specs there. So if you are thinking about buying an airplane, make sure you check out our Aircraft Guide. We also have the Bahamas and Caribbean Guide, trying to inspire people to go out and maybe expand their flying envelope by flying down to the Caribbean and the Bahamas, and everything you need to know to do that is in these guides. They're really great resources. And finally, around the campus here, if you get a chance, I hope you go out in front of our tent and look at the 2021-22 sweepstakes airplane, which is a Grumman Tiger, one of my favorite airplanes that really, when I was a teenager learning to fly, it and its little brother, the Cheetah, were absolute inspirations for me. I thought they were the coolest airplanes as a 17-year-old with a sliding canopy and that. I just could see myself flying that. And ultimately, I did get to fly some a little bit, and this is our sweepstakes airplane for coming up, and it's a beautiful airplane, and it's going to get even better. It's got a wonderful Garmin panel in it, G3X Touch. We have a Lycoming engine that's just been overhauled and provided to us by Air Power, and a lot of other things left to do, though. Including the paint and interior, and we're going to be reaching out to some of you for some ideas on how it is that we might move forward, particularly on the paint scheme and that sort of thing. So watch the website for that. And then just generally, we have a lot more services available to you as an AOPA member. Our Pilot Information Center, that's like an online program where you can go on and ask questions that can be answered by our staff, but also are out there publicly so that others can weigh in and provide even more answers and more of their experiences that might be supportive of you. But the Pilot Information Center is also resident in Frederick. It's just a phone call away where we have technicians on the line to answer your questions. Many of them are CFIs, they're mechanics, they've run FBOs, they've worked for the airlines, and they have medical backgrounds, some of them. And so all those kind of questions and those resources are available to you just a phone call away. So make sure you take advantage of that as part of your membership. So I think that's about it for what we plan to talk about today.
Tom?
Yeah.
I got to make a pitch.
Okay. Pitch, Melissa.
Sorry. So June 1st, so first of all, the James Ray Foundation has been very generous to the foundation over the years. And each year for the past 5 years, they've done a matching grant challenge. The challenge opened up on June 1st. It runs to the end of the year. It's called the AOPA Ray Foundation You Can Fly Challenge. And every dollar donated to the challenge is matched by the Ray Foundation up to $2.5 million. So every single dollar that is donated to the AOPA You Can Fly Challenge, it's double the impact for the high school and the other You Can Fly program. So I just wanted to pitch that. That's open through the end of the year, and you just log on to our website to get to the form or see us in the tent. Thanks. Thank you.
Okay. Thanks. That is certainly a worthy cause, as you've heard. We do have a few questions that have come in. One of them, Mark, I'm going to toss to you because it's related to basic med, but it's a question that we hear a lot, unfortunately. A person lost their basic med due to a stent. They applied for special issuance in Oklahoma, It's approaching 4 months now, and not much happening in Oklahoma City. That's hardly the first time we've heard that. So, Mark, I know you're engaged with the new federal air surgeon, and she seems to be committed to making a difference. So talk about your interaction with her.
Well, it's certainly that's a fact. I mean, unfortunately, the delay in Oklahoma City is darn near pathetic, and it's one that, for the very first time, the federal air surgeon actually agrees. It's unacceptable. And between her, Susan Northrup, and Brett Wyrick, who's the deputy, they're committed to changing it. You know, I like Tom said, I get these calls, emails every week. And why is it taking so long? And why? In the days of electronic transmission of data, does the FAA still require facsimiles that they lose on a regular basis in Oklahoma City? It is unacceptable. The only thing I can tell you is I actually believe her. I have not been comfortable when the previous air surgeons will put any energy or any real differences to the mechanisms, because we're now starting to see electronic transmissions. We have a group of AMEs that we call our panel that work with FAA right now, where we're finding the hot spots and the soft spots in the process. And for the very first time, this federal air surgeon and her team are actually listening to what the real docs in the field are finding, rather than just asking Oklahoma City what they're doing. Now, again, like everybody that's worked remotely, there have been some interruptions, more than we would have liked to have seen in this area. I am here not to defend them, but I am here to say that I believe them, and we'll give them a shot to make sure they're making a real difference.
Okay, that sounds good. Hey, Mike Ginter, I'm going to put you on the spot. So come up and grab a mic, maybe from Murray or something. This is a question definitely right up your alley, and since you made the mistake of showing up, I'll ask you to go to work. Question is, my airport in California is being threatened by the city. They want it closed. How can AOP help keep it open? And how can we teach politicians? Good luck with that one.
How can we teach politicians? That's exactly what we're focused on in the airport fight all over the country. Let's wait till the sound of freedom dissipates here a second. So we have 101 open airport cases today, and our team of regional managers and airport experts since January of 2020 have closed 230 airport cases or airport issues. So we're tracking it, and we're hot on them. It's everything from Santa Monica down to a little lease issue at the local airport. The number one thing we've identified that's a national problem, but it's a local solution, is how do you convince a local town, city, municipality to appreciate the value of their airport? Far too many have the assistant city administrator as the airport manager, and it's just a pain in the neck to administer that airport when he's got other city problems. So we're working hard with our friends in the other aviation associations very closely. There are airport experts in each group. We've already congealed. We're working on some national messaging in the form of 20 or 30-second infomercials of what's the value of my airport to my city. And it might be the access to the national airspace system. It might be the EMS helicopter or the firefighting helicopter or the emergency rescue helicopters. It might be that there's a huge flight school there with tons of jobs and kids coming out. Maybe there's a big STEM program. Every airport has a different story, and you all know that. Mark told me the day I got hired, if you've seen one airport, you've seen one airport. So we are working hard to convince airport owners to appreciate their airports. Our airport support network is helping us do that, and we've grown by 500 over the last 2 years. So we're making great headway, and anybody out here that doesn't know who their ASN is, we're taking volunteers, and you're probably going to be hired on the spot to help us.
Thanks, Mike. You know, that is one of the things that we find ourselves a role in, and telling people how big this industry is. It employs 1.2 million people in this country are employed in general aviation activities, one form or another. 1.2 million people working in GA. $247 billion of economic activity is what general aviation drives, as you can tell by looking out here. So we have a very robust and a growth. The military needs us, the airlines need us. Everybody that flies needs a good, healthy general aviation airport. We are able to keep these 5,000 public airports open because of the team and working with the community to make sure that we do. We're always nervous, we're always looking over our shoulder, but we're doing good so far.
Right, and it's not just the United States. Question about Basic Med. You talked a little bit about this, but the question specifically is about the letter we recently wrote to Canada with COPA, the Canadian Owners and Pilots Association. about basic med being accepted in Canada. Maybe a little more detail about, what do you think may happen with that? Have we heard anything?
So yeah, we proposed a letter working with Copa, which is our northern neighbors, similar organization about owners and operators of aircraft in Canada, quite a bit smaller. And if you think about the difference, I think they have about 10,000, 15,000 really active members, and we're north of 300,000. So it's a big difference in the scale, and I think it goes to speak of why we've had 82 years. They care. They're working together as an owner group. They would like to see us get up there with basic med because they know more general aviation is good for them as aviators up there for volume and making sure they keep the access to some of these airports. So I think that was one form of bilateral that we've attempted. The second piece, again, as I mentioned, was ICAO, which is based in Montreal, was the International Civil Aviation Authority. AOPA has a seat at that table for the very first time. And we are now in the rulemaking process to get basic med understood that way. So one way or the other. Now, going to Canada up until August 9th of this year hasn't been an issue for a year and a half. But I know you and those like myself that have had opportunity to fly in Canada. We love flying in Canada. It's a great place to explore. I'm very hopeful is a word, but I'm working hard with the team, regulatory side, legal side, everybody that we can find to team up to find a way to get basic med recognized in Canada and the rest of the world, one way or the other. So stay tuned. I think we'll see some pretty significant motion potentially by later this fall.
Okay. So another question, Murray. A person asking, when did the flight training restrictions start for experimental? And the answer is really pretty recently. This has kind of unfolded painfully. I see Justine, our general counsel back there, heads up our legal services plan. She's been really involved in that on behalf of a number of our members on the legal services plan, so you might want to check that out too. But it's been very recent, and it's been very confusing. But the question specifically is my flight review okay that I got in June?
So it was about 2 weeks ago or a little more before AirVenture when this thing hit the street from the FAA. And we raised Cain about that too, the urgency, why now, right before a big show like this. So as far as a flight review in June, from my knowledge, it is okay if it was before this was issued, this interpretation by the FAA. And I know they mentioned our chief counsel's here. I know our legal team could definitely confirm that. Whether I'm right or wrong, I believe I'm correct on that. So, yeah, that's in June, it should be fine.
I'll second that. I see Justine's nodded her head and running the legal team. It really just became effective 2 weeks ago tomorrow. That's when this kind of dropped out of the sky, and all of a sudden, you needed to have a LOTA to do training in any of those classifications of aircraft. Anything previous to that has not been ruled on or suggested is anything other than compliant, which is, again, why now? Why couldn't we have talked about this before it was dropped out of the sky and made it so confusing, so hard for people to understand, does it affect me? And it's been a big communications challenge.
Yeah, it really has. I mean, our team alone has worked with Justine and the DC office and Mark and everybody else trying to put the word out as crisply as we can, but it is a pretty complicated thing. So you need to really pay attention to the communications coming out of AOPA in this subject because we're doing our best to kind of convey it as it happens, and there's still more to come on it, I'm sure. One more question, and Mark, another one that we hear about a lot, and I know you've personally been involved with the folks at the FAA on, is about DPEs. We talk about getting more people in the skies. How can we do that with so few designated pilot examiners?
Yeah, it's been one of my hot buttons. Just kind of give a little history about DPEs. We maxed out in 1980 with 50,000 private pilot's licenses given. We dropped down, as Tom mentioned a bit ago, to about 17,000 private pilot's licenses issued about 4 or 5 years ago. We've been on the steady climb upward. I'm pretty hopeful the next review we'll see close to 30,000 PPEs, pilot's license, PPLs licenses given. We need to get back to 40 or 50 or 60,000, and the narrow neck of the funnel right now is the number of DPEs availability, in some cases even the price of DPEs. And I know Marie and I have been having weekly conversations around this because we want to see that dashboard with the FAA and saying, are you going fast enough to get enough DPEs to be available broadly enough? Now, we changed 2 years ago. We got them to get rid of the regional restriction and the number of check rides they could do per day. And that's helped some, but not enough. Marie, can you finish up on that?
Yeah, thanks. So the DPE-wise, we are heavily involved in DPE reform, and one of my people is actually on that committee and helping push the FAA to go in a direction to get more DPEs. To kind of specify a little more on that, what we're seeing is also that the FAA sometimes will say, well, we have plenty of DPEs. It's based on need of the office, the FSDO. But what we're seeing through our research is, and I've had discussions with FAA on this already and will continue, is that geographically certain functions, as an example, seaplane DPEs, we have certain areas of the country, they are just suffering trying to get check rides done. And so we're really pushing hard on that, looking at the DPEs and working, pushing and working with the FAA on getting the DPE reform done. It's something we will stay engaged and continue to stay engaged on till we get it where we need it to be.
Maria, I think we got down to as low as like 700 active DPEs on the registry for a while. Now we're back up to about 1,100.
I don't think it's at 11 yet. I think it's showing around 800 something right now.
Well, maybe they got to be at 1,100 and head back to 1,500.
For
That's
sure.
We need to get those numbers way up, way fast if we're going to get 40, 50,000 new pilots a year. So count on us to work with the FAA to get that done. It's really an important one.
Absolutely.
There's a lot of demand.
Okay, well, thanks everybody for your attention. Thanks for being AOPA members and engaging with us. I hope maybe you have a little better sense today after this about some of the things that AOPA is doing on your behalf every day. And go enjoy the tent and enjoy the rest of the show. We'll see you around.
Thanks.